There is one cake I have been dying to bring to all of you, and that is a butter cake. But I have a little bit of a twist to my butter cake. I do a bourbon butter cake. Oh, this cake is so moist, that rich buttery flavor with a deep bourbon glaze. You don't want to miss it. Coming up next, right here on The Sweet Spot. So our first step is going to be to mix our dry ingredients. So I have my flour here. And what I'm going to do next is add my baking powder and my salt. And just taking a whisk or a spoon or a spatula, you just want to make sure all of those are well combined. The reason I like to pre-mix my dry ingredients is because I like to make sure the baking soda is really mixed into the batter. The last thing you want is pieces of your batter to have that baking soda really sodium flavor. All right, that's all mixed together, so we're gonna set this aside. And now we're gonna move on to making our batter. The first thing you're gonna add to your mixing bowl is all of that butter. I'm taking my spatula and just force all of that butter into my mixing bowl. I like to pre-cream my butter, so what I'm gonna do first, for 30 seconds to a minute, let the mixer really smooth out that butter. All right, so my butter's all nice and smooth. I'm just gonna take my spatula and knock any butter off of my mixing blade here. Kind of just do a light scrape on the sides of the bowl. And next I'm gonna add my sugar and really cream my butter and sugar together. So taking my sugar here and just pouring that in. And once again, on medium until that's mixed and combined. It varies. You wanna make sure that you start to see that butter break apart and that sugar really blend in. So my butter and sugar is all creamed together. It'll almost look like it's forming a crumble as the sugar and butter start to combine. So I'm gonna scrape down the sides of my bowl and I'm gonna start adding in my eggs. This recipe has 5 eggs. So instead of adding them all at once, I wanna add a few at a time. So I'm gonna add about 2 at a time to start out and let those really mix in. All right. And then I'm gonna mix on medium in between each one, but you don't have to mix it for a long time. Just make sure that you get that egg really combined in with your batter. I've added in all of my eggs. I'm just gonna scrape down the sides of the bowl just to make sure everything's mixed in and kind of move my spatula across the bottom. And the next 2 ingredients I'm gonna add in, one is the magical bourbon. So we're gonna add in our bourbon along with our vanilla. And then we're gonna give that just a soft mix and let that combine with the eggs, sugar, and butter mixture. That bourbon smells so good mixing with that sugar and that butter. Oh, smells so good. So just a light scrape of the bowl. And then I'm gonna start adding in my dry ingredients. So just remove my whisk there. And I'm gonna start adding in my flour a little at a time. I like to rotate in a little bit of buttermilk and a little bit of flour. It really keeps the batter from getting too thick and then adding moisture to where you have to mix a little bit more. It allows everything to combine evenly. So I'm gonna add about half of my flour in now. And we're gonna let that mix on medium until everything's nice and smooth. So that's all mixed together. So it's time to add about half of my buttermilk. And then we're gonna mix that again on medium until that's smooth. All right, so everything has been added. The mixture is nice and smooth. I'm just gonna scrape down the sides of my bowl and make sure everything's mixed in. And our next step is we're gonna now start adding our batter to our bun, but I add a little bit of something special to my bun pan, and that's pecans. And I'm gonna show you how I add them in a little bit. Let me get this off the mixer and let's start filling our bun pan. So it's time to fill our bun pan. Before I fill my bun pan, I like to take pecans and add just a light layer at the bottom, because once you turn it over, you're gonna have this beautiful pecan kind of decor over the top of your bun cake. So I'm just gonna add a little bit in, not too many, just a soft layer, just give it a little bit of a little something extra. And just drop them in. And where I have grooves, I like to layer them up a little bit, so when I turn it over, it kind of goes with the design of my bun pan. So once you have your pecans in the bottom of the bowl, just scoop in your batter right on top. And the reason I scoop in is because I can pour it right on top of the pecans and help them stay in place as a base layer. As you can see, just giving a scoop, letting it press against the pecans so they keep their shape, and just going around until I fill the bun pan completely. So my bun pan is filled, it's ready to go in the oven. I do want to note the pecans are optional. You don't have to add the pecans. The cake will taste amazing with or without them. I like that flavor of pecans mixed with that butter and bourbon. I encourage you to try it. I know you'll love it. So our next step is putting this in the oven at 325 degrees for 60 to 70 minutes. Now, I always set my timer for the lower time because I do not want to overcook my bun cake. So set it for 60 minutes, test it with a toothpick. If the center comes out clean, then your cake is ready and you can take it out. If it needs extra time, then set your timer for another 10 minutes or another 5 minutes, however you want to do it. Just watch it to make sure it doesn't overcook. Also, test several sections of your bun cake. Bun cakes are notorious for baking in some sections and not fully baking in others. So test every section of your cake. So let's put it in the oven and get it started. So my bourbon butter cake is all done. It's cooled, it's on a wire rack. It's time to make a glaze. Now on my bourbon cake, I like more of a traditional confectioner sugar-based glaze. A lot of them have a butter glaze with bourbon that's more like a syrup that soaks into the cake. I like this glaze. You can play around and choose which one, but we're gonna go with the confectioner sugar-based glaze. So we're starting with our confectioner sugar. Then you're gonna add in your bourbon and your cream. And just taking a whisk, just whisk it until it's nice and smooth and has a really nice, rich, thick glaze consistency. And if for some reason your glaze is not getting as thin as you want it, you can always add a little bit more cream. That will loosen the glaze up. I like mine on the thicker side because I like it to really coat the cake. So it's a nice consistency. And now we're gonna move on to actually putting the glaze onto our bourbon butter cake. All right, I'm just gonna take a large tablespoon here, and I'm just gonna take the glaze and just let it pour right over the top of my cake. You can also adjust the glaze recipe. It calls for 2 tablespoons of bourbon. Because this is not a cooked glaze, you know, you're really getting that bourbon flavor come through. If it's a little strong for you, just cut it down. No worries, and just add a little bit more cream. But I really want to taste that bourbon, so I went for the full 2 tablespoons. Well, here it is, our bourbon butter cake. Oh, it looks so good, and I cannot wait to cut into it. Let's cut a slice and see how great it looks inside. Oh, I love to hear that crunch. All right, here we go. Oh my God, look at that slice. It looks so good. I wish you could grab it through the screen because it smells amazing. Thank you for joining me once again and letting me bring this bourbon butter cake recipe to all of you. Click like, subscribe, tell your friends because I have more exciting, delicious, and fun recipes coming your way right here on The Sweet Spot.